My name is Meredith Swartz, and I'm the Director of Purchasing for the Department of Administration. The Department of Administration is basically the business office for all state agencies. So we have a very diverse group of divisions that I purchase for, which includes the Hub Office, actually. We have these advocacy groups: Hub Office, Indian Affairs, Non-Public Ed, and Women and Youth Advisories. And when I first came on, our Hub numbers didn't look great. And so I've worked directly with the Hub Office to try to help not only increase our spend, but a spend across the state. And I think it starts first with teaching our vendors how to do business with the state and make sure that you're submitting great proposals so that you can get those awards and help us increase our spend. So along with the advocacy groups, we have asset management groups, which includes all of the buildings downtown. Facility Management Division takes care of all the buildings and the maintenance on these buildings, the janitorial contracts on the buildings, and even some of the repairs and things like that on our buildings in the downtown complex. We have state construction underneath us, and we're going to talk a little bit about state construction rules of purchasing. They are different than what we're going to, the main focus today, but we'll go over where to find their manuals and how they buy. State construction is one of my divisions that if state construction needs something, I will buy for them. We manage all of the parking decks in the downtown complex and parking lots. That's with state parking. And then state property. We have leased property all across the state, and they manage not only our owned property, but also our leased property. We have state services. So these are services divisions for all the other departments to use, which includes the Mail Service Center, motor fleet, purchase and contract. You're going to hear me talk a lot about them today. They are the governing authority over how goods and services are purchased. So purchase and contract is the state division that helps write the administrative code, the rules, and the policies that govern how we buy. There's also state and federal surplus property, and we're going to talk about how you can take advantage of what is offered at state surplus, as far as they are the state's auction service and warehouse where you can buy used equipment, vehicles, anything else for your office. And then we have some additional departments. They call us the land of the misfit toys, where we have these smaller divisions that do not have the capacity to manage their budgets and things like that. That includes State Board of Elections, which actually they just went off on their own. And so now they are their own department. We no longer manage their budgets. But we do have State Human Resources, Lieutenant Governor, and Military and Veteran Affairs. So with all of these different groups, we buy an array of everything from vehicles to consultant services, to maintenance services, to janitorial services, and everything in between. So with that, like I said, this is a lot of information today. We are going to go over the rules of state procurement. We're going to talk about registering to work with the state. If you are a hub vendor, which I'm sure the majority of you are already registered. When you did your hub registration, you are already a registered vendor with the state, but I'll show you where you can update that and all the information on that. We're going to talk about our systems such as e-procurement and EVP and how those work and how they intertwine. And then we're going to talk about the hub program a little bit. I'm not going to go through the main details of what you need to become HUD certified, because most of you are, but it is also included in this presentation, so you have it at your ready. We're going to talk about seeking competition and the different methods we do that with, and then the different solicitation documents we use, and then how to respond to those solicitation documents, what we're looking for when we are evaluating, and then what happens after you're awarded, and some contract monitoring on the back end. So this is going to be a lot of information. Like Carla said, use the chat window. The Hub Office is there to answer what we can. I do have some breaks through here where you can either raise your hand, come off mute. We'll call on you to answer those questions. But if you want to, go ahead and put them in the chat, and then I can run through those too at those breaks. All right, so first we're going to talk about the rules of purchasing and the laws that govern how we buy. We're going to talk about the differences between goods and services and how that drives our procedures. We're going to talk about the different types of contracts we have, and then delegations, which is how much money we're spending, and the policies that governs. So when we talk about the rules and the laws that govern state procurement, first we have the guys at the legislature that make the general statutes. So those are the rules, because we are using taxpayer dollars, the laws that actually govern how we buy. From there, state purchase and contract for goods and services, state construction for construction projects, and IT all have an administrative code and different statutes that govern how we buy. We're going to concentrate on the purchase and contract goods and services administrative code today, and the IT administrative code on our processes and procedures. Then each agency, when I say agency, we're talking departments, the departments of the state. We're talking about universities, community colleges, also some municipalities, and public schools. So with that, we have the North Carolina Procurement Manual that is written by state purchase and contract that gets into the actual procedures of who needs to approve what and where those different systems and how we use those. So that gets into the rules of what we do. And then from there, all of those different agencies have their own manuals. So when we start talking about small purchase, every agency under a certain delegation can manage their own purchases and make their own rules on how they buy for small purchase. So those are included in the agency's procurement manual. All of our travel rules and laws of how we buy travel and airfare and all of that is used in the OSBM budget manual, manages how we buy travel purchases. So when we talk about those governing authorities, we have the general statutes and administrative code listed here for each purchase and contract, information technology, and state construction. As you see, there are different areas of those laws and those codes. For purchase and contract, we're talking about goods and services, minor repairs, anything like that. When I talk about information technology today, anything that has to do with data now has become an information technology purchase. So any types of software, hardware, there's also IT staffing, but anything really, even if there is a service that is requiring you to receive data or us to receive data that has any kind of software or online portion to that purchase, is now become an information technology purchase. So those would fall under those statutes and that code. State construction is when we are actually renovating or altering a physical properties. We, under goods and services, still can perform small repairs or replace equipment like for like, but if we are actually moving walls or doing any kind of renovation that requires design review, it has to go through state construction. So they have their own set of procurement rules. The rules that we're going to concentrate on today and those policies and procedures that are in this presentation are for goods and services and DIT purchases. So who are those customers that you can buy for or sell to? That will be the 28 executive state agencies, 58 community colleges, 16 public universities, over 2,500 public charter schools, 100 counties, and 500 plus municipalities. So that's a lot of folks that are posting their solicitations in the same places we are. Those opportunities are out there. There's a lot of dollars to be spent by all of these different agencies. The rules when we get into small purchase and to mandatory resources and things like that are all mandatory for the 28 state agencies. So that's where when I start talking about mandatory resources and mandatory state term contracts, those can be mandatory for the state agencies. The community colleges, universities, and the rest of these folks might be able to go outside of that out to open purchases within the vendor community faster than we can. So who are those state agencies? Well, we've got administration. That's who I'm with. I'm the director of the Department of Administration. We have Commerce, DEQ, Human Health Services, Information Technology, Military and Veteran Affairs, which is another office that I take care of, Cultural Resources, Public Safety, Revenue, Transportation, Agriculture, Insurance, Justice, Labor, Public Instruction, Secretary of State, Treasurer, the Lieutenant Governor, which is another one of mine, State Auditor, Administrative Hearings, Board of Elections, Community College System Office, the Education Lottery, General Assembly, Office of the Governor, Ports Authority, State Controller, and Wildlife. So even within those 28 different agencies, there's a lot of dollars that are being spent. So if you see something, I'm going to give you several tips today, some insider trading tips. One of the tips is that the list of procurement directors is on PNC's website. So you'll be able to get the contact information for the purchasing director for every single one of these agencies and can reach out directly to try to just let them know what you do and see if one of their divisions does what you are offering, and see if you can get into some contacts that actually would be reached out directly to. And I will, in the back of this presentation, there's all the websites that I talked to is a reference sheet for you for all the different websites, and we'll show you some of those websites in detail today. So what happens first? Somebody says, I got to buy something, and we are the question people at PNC. So we start saying, what are you trying to buy? How much money does it cost? What does your division have any funding to actually buy this? How do you buy it? So what are the documents you need? What are the procedures that you're going to have to go through? All of those different questions. Hopefully the people at the agency level, your guy that you're going to hear me talk about, the guy that turns the wrench, the guy that works on a boiler, that he knows that something's broken. So he starts the process of, it's broken, now what? I got to go get these quotes, or this has got to go out for bid, and all of that starts with our end users. Because all purchasing procedures and the steps that we take are determined by two things. What are you trying to buy, and how much money does it cost? So when we talk about what are you trying to buy, there's differences between goods and services. There's also some mandated resources for us state agencies versus going out open market, which means reaching out to the vendor community to solve our problem. There's also delegations. So depending on what we estimate the cost of this good or service, it will also drive our procedures. And then, of course, there's always some special circumstances. So we talk about goods and services. What's the difference between a good or a service? So goods are all those tangible properties. So they're commodities, supplies, materials, equipment, other tangible property. With goods, in our e-procurement system, the vendor is charged a 1.75 fee on goods. That is associated to the commodity code. We're going to talk about the different commodity codes and what that fee is used for. But as far as goods could be something as good as vehicles. It could be office supplies, anything like that. Whereas services are intangible work that are performed by an individual that has specialized knowledge or experience or similar capabilities. So that could be something as complex as consultant service. It could be something as easy, not as easy, but something as plumbing service, power washing, things like that, where you have the vendor on site to perform a service and then they bill you. They do not leave goods with you. So we do have some mandated resources, and this is where the state agencies are mandated to go through. So before we go out for open market purchase, we have mandatory state term contracts for both PNC and DIT. And we'll go over what those mandatory contracts are or what those state term contracts are. There are both mandatory and convenience contracts for us to use. But if it is mandatory, the state agencies must buy off those mandatory state term contracts. We have Correction Enterprises, which is a subsidy of the Adult Corrections Department. And with that, we teach our incarcerated individuals at the state level a skill, a trade, or whatnot while they're incarcerated to help them enter into society better when they get out and have that skill or that trade skill. With that, they produce goods for the state. So that can include, we buy a lot of furniture from Correction Enterprises. There's a farm out west, so they provide all of their food. Not all of their food, but some of their food that is then bought by the prisons to supply with that. There are all other kinds of services and goods that Correction Enterprises, and that is our first step shop to complete our services before we go out to open market. We have federal and state surplus property. You heard me mention that. That is one of our divisions. So out off of Chapel Hill Road, if you are just starting a business and you have an office space that you need to fill, check out state surplus. They have every kind of equipment, computers, phones, laptops, office chairs, conference tables, filing cabinets, anything you can think of for sale. That's all state used property or seized property through law enforcement. So all of that is at the warehouse off of Chapel Hill Road. They also have online auctions for our vehicles and things like that. So just a good resource for you. Check out state surplus property. With procurement, anything that we are replacing, we have to reach out to state surplus and say, hey, do you want this old thing that we are replacing to try to resell it? And also we can go out to state surplus and see if, we have a group that doesn't have much of a budget. They can go out and buy from state surplus and keep those tax dollars within. I think we're getting some feedback. Everybody can mute their phone. Thanks. All right. The other one is Mail Service Center. When you get your DMV registration, that goes through the Mail Service Center. We do all of our postage through the Mail Service Center as long as they can handle it, and we get a break on postage. So any kind of mailing situation has to be gone through the Mail Service Center to give them first crack at it. State Construction Office, we talked about that. That is if it is an actual renovation or building an actual property. State construction gets involved in that and becomes a state construction process. State Property Office handles all of our leases for all of our lease properties. And then we can always reach out to our partners within the state, including our universities, our community colleges, and our other agencies to see if we can keep those taxpayer dollars within the state and not go out and waste those, and see if we can get somebody within the state to complete our needs within. If that does happen, we'll write a contract between the two agencies on what's called a memo of understanding. So state term contracts are used, like I said, both DIT and PNC have state term contracts. The vendor has to supply their services or their goods to the entire state, but they work just like any other contract that the state has, in that they are bid out. They have a contract term, and at the end of that term, they have to be bid out. We do have several of the contracts. I know like the DIT staffing contract, I think, has continuous open bidding where they can continually put more vendors on it. There are just a few like that, but most of them end just like any other contract and then are rebid. There is a searchable list on PNC's website and DIT's website of all of our state term contracts. That list includes a contract manager and their phone number and their email. So if you have any questions on how one of those state term contracts works, or if you have any questions on how to get on it, when does it end, when does whatnot, it should have all that information on the website. However, feel free to contact the contract manager for that particular contract. The purpose of state term contract is that we're able to pull the data and be able to negotiate pricing better for the state, because it groups us all together to be able to say, okay, we buy more of this than we do of that. Therefore, we're getting this for cheaper, because we can pull the data and say we buy a bazillion of these and only 3 of these. So we're able to negotiate that pricing. Also, shorter delivery times amongst the state, trying to keep that within the state. So once all of those mandatory things, if nothing meets what we need through those mandatory resources, that's when we can go out to open market, out to the vendor community to be able to get quotes, get bids, to be able to finalize all of our services. So procurement report, there are rules and those laws, and we're going to go over what those delegations are that then drive those procedures and approvals for those open market purchases. So as far as a delegation, each agency, university, community college has an overall general delegation that under that delegation, the agency can handle that purchase in-house. It does not require any additional approvals from statewide. Anything over that delegation can require additional approvals by statewide DIT if it is, statewide DIT procurement if it is a DIT purchase, or statewide purchase and contract if it is a goods and services purchase. For DOA, our different agency general delegations are $50,000 for PNC purchases and $25,000 for DIT purchases. And we're going to go over what that delegation means. That means that anything over that's got to get those extra approvals, and it has to go out for bid. So for DOA, you'll see where I've highlighted anything in yellow that I've highlighted is specific to DOA. So for DOA, and most agencies have a little general thing like this in their manual that tells them what they do with those small purchases. So for goods and services, small purchase is at $29,000. That is across the board written into that administrative code that for PNC purchases, anything under $29,000 is totally handled by the department, the division, and they can write any rules that they want to. The vendor can, you don't have to get terms and conditions signed or anything. So what is considered a small purchase is $29,000. So for us at DOA, we have a P card program where we have Visa cards that many of our staff have. So with that P card, we consider a micro purchase anything under $1,000 that's not from one of those mandated resources. They can use their P card, go get what they need, and it's an authorized P card purchase. For anything under $29,000 is considered that small purchase. We at DOA say you can get one quote as long as it's from a hub vendor. So because we have hub, we try our best to make sure that we include hub spend. So for us, anything under $29,000, our requisitioners can go out, get one quote from a hub vendor, submit it in e-procurement, and we cut a PO. If there isn't a hub vendor that can provide the service, they still have to seek competition and get 3 quotes. We go with the lowest, and we issue the PO. From over that small purchase delegation, the vendor must sign our terms and conditions. So here's where we start getting into those documents that the vendors have to sign. So from $29,000 to $50,000, we get them to sign an RFQ document, which is a request for quote, or we have an informal PDF for simple goods that requires the vendor to sign the terms and conditions. We are seeking competition directly by getting 3 vendor quotes using those documents where they execute that terms and conditions. When we get over our general delegation, that $50,000 for a PNC purchase, that's where we go out for formal bids. So the documents we use for that are an IFB and an RFP, and we will get into the weeds of all these documents later on in this presentation. But that's where we require PNC approval before we post that document and before we award that document. So those are formal bids that take a little bit longer. There's statutes that say that we have to post them for a certain amount of time. We have live bid openings and all of that for formal bids. For DIT purchases, for DOA, anything under $5,000, we consider a small purchase. We execute with 1 quote. From $5,000 up to our delegation of $25,000, we get 3 quotes, go with the lowest vendor, and cut the quotes. Over that delegation of $25,000 is where we go out for formal bid. for IT services, and that's that same IFB, RFP, and it requires not only the DIT approvals, but also security reviews of the vendor responses to see where our data is being stored. Every contract that we estimate to be over $1 million also has an additional review of legal before it's posted and before award. So those higher dollar amounts on those contracts require additional approvals. So therefore, they take a little bit longer to get awarded and go through. So a couple of the different types of contracts we have as far as agency contracts, we have a standard term contract that's just a binding agreement between the purchaser and the vendor that sells either certain commodities or services at the prices for a stipulated amount of time. Then we have agency-specific term contracts that work just like a state term contract, but they're only for that agency. We don't guarantee any work under that. We don't guarantee, it's an indefinite quantity. We usually give you, this is what we bought in the past, but we award the rates under that contract so we can buy as we need off of those agency-specific term contracts. We at DOA have a couple of those. One of those is for like emergency restoration. So that includes like coming out and swiping for lead and things like that, and abatement services. So therefore, we have a vendor under contract that includes all his response times to get to us and all of that. And then we just call him when we need him, and we're buying off that contract so we don't have to go through the whole bid process at the time of need when it's an emergency type of service. But like I said, all contract terms are 3 years at the agency level. Anytime we want to go over that, we have to get extra approvals by PNC and DIT to go longer than 3 years. So our standard terms for contracts are 3 years. That's often 1 year with 2 renewals is usually how we write our contracts. The service contracts, particularly, we have just contractual service, which is where we're doing that service contract with that specialized knowledge or experience of that vendor. Just examples are janitorial, landscaping, med lab, training instructors, building maintenance, things like that. The other type of service contract that's a little different is consultant service. And what we consider consultant service is when the vendor is coming in to review one of our programs and because they have the expertise on that program, and they offer suggestions and reporting and things like that on how we can make it better. They're not going to actually do the work to make it better, but they're going to give us their ideas, their plan, their report of whatever they are reviewing and analyzing, and their advice for formulating and implementing those improvements into the program. Those types of contracts must also have an approver by the governor's office. So that's another step that takes a little bit longer to get those types of contracts approved. Any vendor that's receiving payment for services over $600, you'll have to submit that 1099 form. So know that if we have any services that are over $600, we do require that 1099 form. So we talked a little bit about DIT. Like I said, DIT has its own state term contracts. They are under that general statute 143B 1320, and they are for hardware, software, online data subscriptions, license agreements, anytime we touch data. So the statewide DIT procurement approves all of those policies over that agency delegation, which for us is $25,000. DIT also has state term contracts, including software, hardware, telecom, IT services. They do have that staffing contract as well. Those are all listed on their website along with the contract manager for each one of those. Just be on the lookout if you see a bid out there for something for IT-related services that it could potentially require you to submit a VRAR, which is a Vendor Readiness Assessment Report, or a SOC 2 report. And those 2 reports talk about where your data is stored. So that's what they're looking for. I wanted to make sure that when you see those bids out there, if you see a VRAR or a SOC 2. If it's required to be submitted, it has to be submitted with your bid. And if it's not, you're automatically rejected. So just be on the lookout for those with IT purchases. Things always come up in purchasing. So we do have some special services and special things that do happen, including that could cause us to waive competition. There is listed in the administrative code under 05B 1401 is the list of what is an approved waiver. Some of the biggies are that it's a sole source of supply, so only that vendor can bid. We also have waivers for this particular product, so it could be brand specific. We have emergencies happen all the time. So there could be an emergency. It could be that it's standardization and we have this piece and it's got to fit into that piece, therefore it's got to be standard. It could be that this vendor has done all this work up to here and now we need these additional services, so it's an ongoing job or task. Either way that we waive competition, it is always documented and justified and documented within the procurement file as to why we are waiving that competition. So I'm going to stop right here and see if we have any questions in the chat on all the rules and the laws.
We do not have any questions that haven't been answered in the chat.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you want to open it up for anyone to raise their hand.
Yeah. Roxanne?
Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think my first question is, I took a note, you said that the state and federal surplus property is on Chapel Hill Road. Two questions with that is, do you have a physical address as one, and do we have to have some sort of documentation to start shopping there? How does that work?
No, it is open to the public.
And I did place the address website in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yes. It's in the chat.
6501 Chapel Hill Road is what I just looked up. Yep.
And then my last question is for, you said the purchasing director is on the PNC website. I apologize. What is that actual website?
So like I said, there's a whole list of all the websites that I talk about today in the back of this presentation. You will get a copy of this presentation, but if you simply Google DOA PNC or purchase and contract, you can find their website. And I'll show you what their website looks like in a little bit here. And then I see a question in the chat that says, are all agencies eligible for sole source contracts, and do they have? So all agencies are able to write a sole source contract. Like I said, they would have to justify why that vendor and why only that vendor. Is it some proprietary? On the norm, it's because they offer some kind of proprietary service or good. And then we have to get that letter from the vendor as well. So it's all documented to be able to write a sole source contract.
All right. Looks
all right,
like
I'm going to continue on. All
yes.
right. All right, so we're going to get into doing business with the state. We're going to talk about the e-procurement basis of the e-procurement program. We're going to talk about how to register an EVP. Like I said, most of you are already registered if you're a hub vendor, but we're going to show you how to update your EVP. We're going to talk about the e-procurement upgrade that happened in 2020 and how that affected commodity codes, and look at all of that. So with e-procurement is our ordering system that is used by most state agencies, a lot of the community colleges, and some of the universities. I think the only state agency that isn't using it is DOT. They are still using a SaaS system, but everyone else is using e-procurement. The e-procurement provides a single point of access to North Carolina government organizations. Like I said, most agencies are using it, and then most universities and community colleges. It helps us increase order accuracy. It allows us to have multiple line items for electronic orders and a consistent purchasing format. Many of those state term contracts have uploaded searchable catalogs for us. So when we start the process at the requisition stage, we're able to, let's say we're buying off of the office supplies state term contract. It will allow us to go directly to our office supplies vendor through the system and basically act like we're at Amazon, click add them to cart, and then it fills and populates our requisition process to then become a PO. With e-procurement, you are charged a 1.75 fee for goods only. So your tip one today is that goods only are charged that 1.75 fee. If you are providing goods with shipping, shipping is a service, not a good. So that 1.75 fee would be charged on the goods only. So what is that fee used for? Well, it allows us to conduct business electronically. It pays for all of the e-procurement development, maintenance, our ongoing operations, including our help desk for e-procurement. The vendors are able to market your business because it links to EVP where you register. So that's where we search for vendors. That's where you search for opportunities. That's where all of that happens is within EVP that is then linked to our e-procurement system so we can pick you as a supplier and issue POs. So how does your company benefit from being part of e-procurement? Well, it increases your accuracy to us because that's where we find our vendors. It's that single point of access to not only us, but also public schools and community colleges. It allows you to receive comments from us that we can put in that are strictly only for you. And then, so say we didn't have a loading dock or something like that, that you would need information on. It allows for that increased order accuracy. There's also potential savings for you because you're able to market and process those because it's all standard. Also, it allows you to do vendor searches within EVP to find other vendors, and we'll go over how to do that once we get to EVP. And it also allows you to browse those solicitations and get automatic notices of opportunities. So within e-procurement, we did an upgrade in 2020 to a cloud-based system from an on-premise system. And one of the major changes that we made in 2020 was the update of the commodity codes. So we now use the nationally recognized UNSPSC.org commodity codes. If you go to that website, there is a great searchable list. Just know that the nationally recognized codes are 8 digits. We are only using the first 6 in e-procurement and EVP for you to register under. Services all start with a 7, 8, or 9. Everything that is under 7, 8, or 9 are all goods commodity codes. Like I said, shipping is a service. If you were registered in EVP before 2020, your registration was transitioned over to these new codes. It would behoove you to go out into EVP and check your registration and make sure what codes you're registered under. Do not register under all codes. That is when we go out to find vendors to do what we're looking for, we have the ability to look under what codes you're registered. That code drives what notices you get for opportunities. So if you use the UNSPSC.org website, you can really get into the weeds because it's at an 8-digit code search. Then just know that we're only using the first 6 digits. So let's say you offer lawnmowers. If you put in lawnmowers, it's going to show up in UNSPC code as an actual 8-digit code, but then we're only using the 6-digit code, which could be landscape maintenance or landscape equipment or something like that. So it wouldn't get into the weeds of the actual lawnmower. So that's how that works. Make sure and check your codes in EVP, and that is how we issue purchase orders, is every line item has a code attached to it. There is training all over e-procurement for vendors about how this upgrade, which I said is now not really new anymore. But all of that vendor training is out there. There's plenty of job aids on how e-procurement works and how EVP links to it. So speaking of EVP, this is new. We entered into the world of new EVP last summer. It is amazing. It is now a one-stop shop for everything. So when you register as a vendor in our electronic vendor portal, it gives you access to e-procurement to receive purchase orders, to search formal solicitations. It allows you to receive notices of bid opportunities, as well as complete all your hub certification. And then also you can search for vendors in EVP. It allows you to keep your information updated. If you do nothing else today and get nothing else out of this course, I suggest you go out, look at your registration, make sure that the codes that you're registered actually relate to what you're doing, and that the contacts, the emails, the remit to address, all of that is correct, because those are the emails that we're reaching out to. Those are the contacts that are receiving the bids that go out, the notices of formal solicitations, or if we're just asking for a quote, that's who we're contacting, is who is registered in EVP. So the benefits of that is the functionality. It allows us to do all of that from a cloud-based system. For the vendors, it lets you to register to do business, which was on the old EVP, so you were transferred over to the new EVP. It allows you to view and submit your bids electronically, which this EVP replaced IPS. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the old IPS system, but now we use EVP to post our solicitations, and then it allows you to bid directly through EVP to get to those opportunities. It allows you to also register for Hub and those small business enterprise. It allows you to view who has bid on opportunities and awards, and those no longer go away after 30 days. Those are posted out there forever. So you can see what department is out there, has published, and who's been bid on it and what the award is. The new platform makes it easier for us to find qualified vendors, because now you can register at a 6-digit level. In the old system of e-procurement, you could only register at a 4-digit. So it lets us get further into those weeds to actually find those vendors that do the work. And it also allows you to upload larger files in your responses. So with EVP registration, all you need, and like I said, if you're a Hub vendor, you're probably already registered, but it allows, all you need is internet access, your tax ID, and a valid email address. With EVP, you do not have to be signed in to use the vendor search or to search our bids. You do have to be signed in to do your Hub registration and to be able to submit a bid or a response to a bid. But you can, it's an open website, and you can review those opportunities at your leisure without being signed in. This is the link to EVP. If you are not a register, you click register now. It's a simple process to get registered, and biggest, most of all, it is free to register. You just complete that registration process. If you have any problems with e-procurement, EVP, or you're going to hear me talk about the sourcing tool, the Ariba sourcing tool later on, the help desk that you pay the $1.75 to is the group that can help you with all of that. They can help you upload your bids in sourcing. They can help you update your registration in EVP, and they can help you if for some reason you have a problem with a PO. So the help desk is there Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5:30. That's their phone number, or you can shoot them in the email. Any questions?
There is one question in the chat that I just wanted to see if you had any comments on it, but I think you covered this for Allie. I believe Allie Lamb is asking the question, and the question is, what commodity codes should I select if I want notification for goods requiring machining or fabrication of metal and or plastic goods? And just in the fact that the
Yes.
link for the codes will be shared and a review is required of the list to determine what
Yes.
those codes are.
So just real fast, let me show you what that website looks like. USPS. So this is the UNSPSC.org website. You can search by code or code name. So here's where I was saying, if you put in lawn, you're not going to see anything. You will see something, but see how this is an 8-digit code? You would only need the first 6 digits. So if you use the 6 digits and search, that's going to give you agriculture and garden hand tools, right? So that gives you a little bit more into the weeds. Just know that, and that then you would be only registering under the 6-digit codes. So that's how that website works. The other one is the EVP website. So this is the EVP website. Like I said, you can browse solicitations. You can sign in here, sign up here, or browse vendors here. And we will get into the weeds of that, I think, in a little bit in this presentation. But that is the EVP website.
And so that was the only question in the chat. And we can open for a raised hand if someone has a question about that particular module.
Okay. We'll keep going then?
Oh,
wait.
Looks like one hand. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, so I work for a machining and fabrication company, and we have been in the EVP system and just recently got our hub certification. And going through that, we are a job shop, meaning that we do all kinds of things. We might do guards for a company, or we might do welding services on site. And I found that I'm not getting very far because I'm probably over-selected the areas where we can help. But the struggle is that I don't know what we're making to therefore search for what I can offer. Because we can do anything. We can make replacement parts. We can, we can repair screens for the water service center. I mean, we can, and so it's how do I narrow that down?
If you do welding services, I would look under your services codes because there would be a labor services in there.
Right, but that's just like one small piece of what we do. I guess I'm looking for how do I get into those goods if I don't know exactly. We're not confined by a specific good.
You can register for multiple codes. So you can register under any of those codes. You'll just have to do an extensive search.
Okay. So there's not really a good way to narrow it down at all.
There's not. There's not.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
I think we can move
Back
forward.
over here. All right, we'll do it. Okay, we're going to get into the hub program. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because most of you are hub vendors, but all of this information is here that you're ready to know what's required to become a hub vendor. We're going to talk about what we've done at DOA to increase our hub efforts, and then we're going to talk about the actual hub certification. So the hub office was instituted during the Executive Order 25, and they're under General Statute 143, 128.2. The goal for hub participation for the state is 10%. That's both on the construction side and the goods and services side. We do not have a set aside. We have this aspirational goal. Each department has their own hub plan that we institute and different hub measures to try to match that goal. Hubs are marked in e-procurement and EVP. So when we go to search for vendors, I'll show you how we just can slide all of the hub vendors up to the top and go and get those quotes from those guys. So hubs we'll talk about the different hub application certification. Just know that recertification is now processed through EVP. All of those different things, the application, the certification, and recertification, all now happens through EVP. So some of our hub efforts, like I said, when I came on as the director, our numbers were not looking great. And so I've worked with the hub office to try to institute some new things to make sure that we are doing our best effort to include hubs and bring them to the table, not only for formal bids, but those small purchases and everything else. So first thing that we did is that we were the guinea pigs to start with the attachment that has now been added to all solicitations, formal solicitations. So those documents that are posted, we added an attachment in the back that says, do you identify as a hub vendor? Are you a minority, woman-owned, disabled-owned business owner? And if you are you hub certified? If you mark that you identify as a hub, but you're not certified during that bid process, we will try to get or during the evaluation stage, we will try to get your information over to the hub office and get you certified before any of those POs are cut to try to capture extra spend. That attachment now also asks, are there any tier 2 hub vendors that are going to be added to this contract? So our contracts are with a prime. We are with the vendor. Our contract is written between the state and whoever submitted that bid, that vendor. However, oftentimes those bidders use hub vendors to do part of that project. So we ask, are there any tier 2 vendors on this particular contract? If so, how much money of this contract is going to that vendor? And we can include that in our hub spend. We at DOA are able to project upcoming opportunities. We have an annual department procurement plan that we send to PNC. We copy the hub office on that to see what we plan to buy this year. We also at DOA do a monthly report to the hub office that says, hey, these are the things that are either out for bid or coming out for bid. Can you help us find some hub vendors to do this work? At DOA, we are super lucky. I have a hub liaison that works directly for me, and she works directly with the hub office to do all of our reporting. But more importantly, she does a lot of market research with the hub community and finds those vendors for those upcoming opportunities. So every month when I send that monthly report to the hub office, she on the back end is reaching out to those vendors under the commodity code in which we plan to post. So even before we post. And we'll reach out and say, hey, you're registered under the commodity code of this bid that we have coming. Is this something that you would be interested in bidding on? If so, we will directly solicit to you and let you know once it's posted. So with that, we've gotten a little bit more response from our hub vendors, knowing that then they know it's coming. But it's all based, again, on that commodity code. We also, when we do go to post, we notify the hub office, hey, this has been posted. The hub office posts on their website, and then we have that direct solicitation to those interested bidders by our liaison. So we have our own hub plan. All of these different efforts are submitted in our hub plan for our agency. And with that, if you take out, we buy millions of dollars worth of vehicles, and there are no hub vendors because we have motor fleet, and there are no hub vendors on our mandatory state term contract for vehicles. But if you take out our state term contract and actually look at where our policies and our hub plan is taking effect, we are well over our 10% goal every month or every quarter. So with that, also in our hub plan, one of the biggest things was that small purchase, right? So if we get one quote and it is from a hub vendor, we move forward. That's 29 grand and under that we can dispense directly to the hub communities. And then if it's that 29 to 50 grand, yeah, we ask for 3 quotes, but one of those has to be from a hub vendor. Then if we go out for bid, that's where we add that attachment. Are you a hub vendor? And if you identify as a hub vendor, we try to work with the hub office to get you certified before we award. And then also we capture that tier 2 spend. Every time we renew a contract, we add that attachment again. Are you a hub vendor now? And do you have any tier 2 spend that's going to happen in this next year of that contract? So with all of that, like I said, our policies, internal policies, and our internal contracts have increased our hub spends, and we're really proud of that. So we're going to get into the application process. Just know that if you are a hub vendor, you have to recertify every 4 years. Don't forget to do it. Make sure you keep your hub certification up to date. The biggest thing that I can tell you about being a hub vendor is you get great opportunities for networking opportunities as well as these training courses. We teach this course monthly. You're able to take it as many times as you want to. I know it's a lot of information, so we have a lot of return people. We also teach a contract management course quarterly. There are other networking, meet the purchaser events, and they offer all kinds of training and events and networking events that you can take advantage of the hub, being a hub vendor. So if you aren't a hub vendor, I strongly suggest and identify as a hub vendor, get certified. It's worth it. You will get some great opportunities for some great information. All right, so I'm going to go in this presentation. You're going to have different, all the different documents that are needed. Just know that we do have a reciprocity certification between, it only works to get certified in North Carolina. If you are already certified in Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, or Virginia, the application process is a little less. If you are an NCDOT disadvantaged, a DBE, that certification is a little bit less too with that. These are all those required documents depending on what type of business you are. You will have that in this presentation to look over. Any questions on being a hub vendor? Or does our hub folks want to say anything?
I think you covered it very well, Meredith, and I have nothing to add there. And I'm looking in the chat, and the one question we have pertains to finding primes. It is, how do you find primes to work with?
So in EVP, which is here, we have browse for vendors. You can look, so you do not have to be a hub vendor to register an EVP. That's all vendors, but it does designate whether they are hub vendors in here. You can search by vendor name. You can search by hub status. You can also do an advanced search, which this gets into in DB. It also gets into if you are looking for somebody that does a certain commodity code. They're down here too. You can look for location, and you can search just like we can search for those other primes. Let's say that there is a bid out there and you think that there's something that you could be a good subcontractor in. Attend the site visit if there is one. You can network at a site visit to meet primes and be able to network there. There's nothing saying that if you can't do the whole project, you can't attend a site visit. So that's another good tip to be able to meet primes. Our solicitations, like I said, if they were posted since last summer, they are still in here on who awarded. Sadly, it does not work the other way. We don't have where if you search a vendor, it won't tell you what they've been awarded, but it will tell you on the award side. So if we searched by state agency and we looked for awarded bids by the Department of Administration and you hit apply, you would see that we awarded this yesterday, I believe. It will show you the addenda that we posted, who all bid, and then who was awarded the contract. When you click on who was awarded the contract, you can then search this vendor to get all of their information. So if you saw a bid that was posted, opened, and awarded, you can, and if it has been awarded, it will show you that. If you have just the tabulations, that means it's still pending award and the award hasn't been posted yet. Hopefully that answers that question.
All right. Let's see. We have a question. How do you update your address and email with Hub? And I can type an answer in the chat for that.
When
Oh,
you
go
sign
ahead.
into EVP, that's where you update all of your information. So you update everything through EVP. It updates it for us in e-procurement. I believe it should update it for Hub. It should update it everywhere. So everything is linked in that now EVP. And if you have any problems, call the help desk because they can help you.
And then the next question, can you share how the reciprocity process works for certification? And I could just briefly get into that. And then I see that Shay is on if Shay wanted to add anything to it. But the reciprocity process would require that we have proof that you're certified with a certifying agency in a surrounding state or with DOT as DBE certified. You would still register in EVP and upload the required documents following the process and similar steps to Hub certification. And so I don't know, I'm hoping that answers your question. There still is a registration process in EVP and proof that you are certified through those agencies and then uploading documents. And I see Shay has come on. If you want to add anything to that, Shay.
Just a quick add. And so the reciprocity option also applies if you have already completed some of the certifications through the Small Business Administration, such as 8A, Women-Owned Small Business. And then there are a couple of national certifying organizations, National Minority Supplier Development Council and the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. So if you have any of those, you can use reciprocity option. Otherwise, you're just going to do the standard process to certify as a hub.
Thank you, Shay.
All right, I'm going to push on. We're going to get into seeking competition. We're going to talk about our documents, what's in those documents, what to be on the lookout for, and then the differences between requirements and evaluation criteria. So we're talking about formal bids here. So what happens? Normally, when we start asking those questions, the end user, the guy that turns the wrench, is going to identify the need. He knows his boiler's broken. He's going to start gathering information, whether it be scope of work or specifications. So specifications is usually for goods. Scope of work is for services. And then he submits all that to purchasing to then review and then write a document. So if it's over those certain dollar amounts, we know which document to put them on. So with that, we could be under $29,000, and it's that small quote. So we're talking about he just reaches directly out to the vendors, looks for them in EVP, and then sends the request via email. Hey, can you give me a quote for XYZ? Can do that for goods or services up to $29,000. The buyer is able to select from that list of vendors. The only thing with a vendor quote is it has to be current 30 days and it needs to be on an actual branded letterhead. So don't just send an email back that says, yeah, I can do that for $5 because we won't take that as an actual quote. We do need a formal quote. He then takes your quote, attaches it in e-procurement, and then it goes through an approval flow within the system, which includes his division director and the accounting and budget people to make sure they have the money. And then we issue the PO to the vendor. It all electronically goes straight to the vendor, and then you can deliver the products. Our e-procurement system allows them to then say, yes, I received those products, and then you can invoice against it. It's a very simple process, and that's for everything under $29,000. So the informal PDF is where we got to get the vendor to sign those terms and conditions. So it can be used for purchases up to 50 grand. So if we are over that 29,000 up to $50,000, because that $50,000 is our general delegation where we have to go up for bid, but up to 50 grand, if we think it's estimated between 29 and 50 grand, we can use this for very simple services. It's a 4-page document. It's got the link to the terms and conditions that the vendor agrees to. And it's like, I need 5 widgets. This is how much price. Put your price in here. It's going to automatically, through a formula say, okay, this is the total price. Everybody signs it. That's now your contract for that. Still, we would take that completed contract, put it into e-procurement to receive a PO against now that contract. A request for quote is a little different. It allows us for much more information on what we're trying to buy. So it is used for more complex services or a combination of goods and services. It can also be used for that seeking competition up to 50 grand. And it's called a request for quote. It can be sent back and forth via email. The responses are open as soon as we get them. What we also use this for is non-advertised procurement. So if we are able to justify that waiver of competition, no matter what the dollar sign is, we can use this document to become the contract for those services. So we can send it back and forth to the sole source vendor or whatnot, or if it's an emergency or whatnot, to become our contract for those approved waiver of competition. That becomes your contract. We use this document. The invitation for bids and the RFP are our formal documents. So we're talking for seeking things that are over $50,000 that go out onto EVP and are posted out for the world to bid on. So over $50,000, if we are seeking simple goods or well-defined goods or simple services. So this could be something, I need this piece of equipment. It's got to meet these specifications. I need it by this delivery date. You're just going to tell me how much money it is. And as long as it meets those specifications or requirements, and you are the lowest bidder, we can award that contract. It's usually based simply on lowest cost meeting specifications or requirements. But with IFBs, we post those out on EVP. The code, the administrative code, those rules tell us that we have to post it for a minimum of 10 days. So with that, know that there could be site visits. We will always have a question and answer period, and we have live bid openings. So that 10 days, that's not 10 calendar days, that's not 10 working days, it just simply says 10 days in the code. So often that 10 days is stretched out a little bit further than 10 days, but if we need it fast, it could only be 10 days. That's the minimum that we have to post it for. So with that, IFB could also be for a simple service such as janitorial services. We know that we want you to come in this room, we want you to vacuum, sweep, mop, vacuum, dust. We want you here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and that's what we want you to do when you're here. You have to have cleaned a building of the same size, maybe, so that's a requirement, but you're just telling us how much money it is, and as long as your past performance shows that you have cleaned that amount of space, then you met that requirement, you offered the lowest bid. That's how we award it. So that is an invitation for bid. A request for proposals is where we have a problem or we are seeking to get a more complex service or a combination of services, and we want the bidder to supply us their best response and solution to that problem or to that RFP. So a request for proposals, your proposals could be a combination of goods and services depending on what we're asking for. This again is over $50,000. It is posted to EVP for that minimum of 10 days. There's often site visits, definitely question and answer period, and we can award on things other than just cost. So maybe we ask for what have you done in the past. Maybe we ask for who's doing the work. We could ask for anything in that evaluation criteria to make sure that that vendor is providing us the best solution based on that evaluation criteria and our documentation and evaluation of that vendor's proposal. There could be site visits with this as well, or like a pre-proposal conference, but there will always be a question and answer period, and we will have a public bid opening for that as well. The other type of document that we don't use this very often because it requires a lot of work on the vendor and there's no result. So it is called an RFI, or a request for information. It is simply for us to gather information and do market research to see what's out there. The only time I've ever used an RFI is when we're buying a new system and we just don't know we need help writing our technical requirements. So it could ascertain and gather that information or ascertain a level of interest from potential bidders. It is not a solicitation document, and therefore there are no terms and conditions attached. There will be no award. It is strictly just gathering information. Once we have that closing, we cancel it out on EVP. It never becomes an award or an actual contract. So in all of these for PNC, so this is for goods and services, DIT solicitations look a little bit different, but all PNC services have the same template and these same different categories within those documents. They are templates, so things can move around, and every agency could have additional things. They can move things around, they could take things out. But we do have standardized templates that we use that are broken up this way. So usually section 1 is the purpose and background. That's going to tell you why we have to buy that. Is there some kind of statute that governs how we got to buy that? It'll include the contract term, how long we expect this to be. Of course, the agencies can do 3 years. If it says that it's 7 years, that means they got extra approvals before they posted it to get that longer term. For second section is your bid information. So that's going to have your solicitation schedule. So the schedule of the bid process is going to have where to submit your questions and all the information on the question and answer period, where to submit your bid, what needs to be included in your bid. It'll also, we speak in numbers and letters and all kinds of acronyms. So normally it has definitions of what all those different acronyms mean. Section 3 is how we are going to award. So that would include all the evaluation criteria, and if we are going to award on lowest bid meeting specs, or if we are going to look at those other things to actually evaluate, if there's a point scale, if whatnot, all of that would be included under Section 3. Under Section 4 are the requirements that you must meet to bid. So it includes pricing, invoicing, delivery information, warranty information, if we're asking for references, if we're asking for that vendor experience, what needs to be in your proposal, if we're asking for samples, where to send those, financial stability, which is usually an attachment in the back that says your company is in good financial standing, if we're asking for certifications or licenses, background checks, personnel information. All of that is usually under the requirements, and those are the requirements of not only to be able to be submitted with your bid, but also required to be awarded that bid as part of the scope. So Section 5 is the meat. That is what you are held to if you are awarded this contract. You must be able to deliver those specifications, those tasks, those deliverables, all of that. We could tell you what we need in your technical approach, how we want your project organization to go around. All of that is in Section 5 scope of work specifications. Contract C is the information on the back end. So if you are awarded this, who is your project manager? What are the reports that you are going to have to submit? If you have a problem with this contract or it needs to be changed, how that happens, if there's a recall on that product, all that information is in their contract administration. And then there could be these attachments. So number one, we're always going to ask you how much is this going to cost me, because that's important. So you will find the pricing form. The instructions to vendors is a standard form, tells you all about how to bid. The terms and conditions, because we're in a formal bid process or a formal solicitation, those are those terms and conditions. Location of workers. So is this product being manufactured in state? Is it out of state? Is it out of country? All of that information is on location of workers. EO50, which is a price matching opportunity, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that is only on goods. Then we have the financial condition, where you talk about your last audit and that you're in good financial standing. The attachment, where you put in your hub information. Are you a hub vendor? Do you identify as a hub vendor? Are there tier 2 vendors that are hub vendors? We could have maps or diagrams or any other information, copies of inspection reports, things like that, that could be in the attachment. So like I said, these are templates. They're subject to change, but as the norm, these are our big categories within a PNC procurement and where to look for that stuff. So some more, we're still talking about documents, the documents of change that we use, because nothing's constant except for change in procurement. So if we need to make a change while something is currently out for bid, we will do that on an addendum. That includes your question and answers that come in. We post all of the answers on an addendum. So addendums are posted out on EVP along with the solicitation document. Requests for clarification happen during the evaluation stage. If we don't understand something that came back in your bid, we could send a request for clarification. A BAFO is what we call a best and final offer. That's if we get into negotiations during the evaluation stage. Those negotiations are confirmed and agreed upon on a document called a BAFO. And then we have the amendment, which are changes to a contract after award. So those are our documents that we use to make changes to contracts. So when you are submitting your bids, and these are for not only sole source formal bids, but also RFQ bids or RFQ documents, even that small PDF, they all require a signature. Make sure that it's signed. If it's not signed, you wouldn't believe how much work goes into these, and then somebody doesn't sign it, it's automatically rejected. You have to sign the execution page. That is obligating your company to provide the goods and services within at the prices you've quoted within. So make sure whoever's signing it is actually authorized to sign it. When you're going through some of these documents can be very, very lengthy. They can be 30, 40 pages, not always, but sometimes if we're buying something that has extensive scope, make sure you're paying attention and you read carefully what's in those documents. So pay attention to shall, must, or mandatory words. Those words mean that if you shall go do this, you shall provide this with your bid. It could be that you must attend the mandatory site visit, because if you don't show up, you're automatically rejected. You had to have attended that site visit. So just be on the lookout for those words, because that's telling you you have to do something, either submit it with your bid or during the term of the contract, something you have to do. So we talk about that schedule. This is, like I said, normally under Section 2 for PNC bids. When we talk about that 10-day window, we are talking between issue solicitation and contract provider response. So that's where those 10 days. If you have site visits and you have questions and answers, that 10 days can get pushed out. The difference, know that when the submit bids date is, don't wait until that submit bids time is. That's when the system will shut you off from being able to submit a bid. So that's usually when the live bid opening happens. Your bid has to be in by that time to be considered. That question and answer period, we're going to go over that, but use that to your advantage. Make sure that you know when that deadline is and get those questions in. It'll say whether this is mandatory or not. Make sure that if it's mandatory, you attend. The difference between contract award and effective date could be that if we plan to award, let's say we have a janitorial contract on this room and it starts January 1, we may award December 1 so that we can get our background checks and get everybody badged and ready to start work by January 1. So the actual contract would be starting on January 1. We would award on December 1. You still might have some things in between to get done, but then it actually goes live January 1. All right, so when we talk about vendors' questions, this is another biggie that I want you to take away from today, is that during a formal solicitation, there's always a question and answer period. You can ask anything. If there is any kind of weird thing that you see in these solicitations, some specification that doesn't make sense, if you don't know what the evaluation criteria, what they're looking for, if it's very vague, if you want to know who currently has this contract, if you want to know what we're currently paying, if you have any questions like that, you can submit them in writing up until the deadline of that question and answer period, and they have to provide you a response. So all those responses will be collected. They will be posted in an addendum, and it's all unanimous. So, or no vendor is attached to that question. So even if you don't submit questions, it behooves you to look at those addendums and see what questions were answered, because it potentially could change your bid. So just be mindful of that the question and answer period, use it to your advantage, and it is very important. Know that if a division agency is using the sourcing tool, which you're going to hear me talk about, the Ariba sourcing tool for submitting your bid, there is a message board, and that is where you submit your questions. You don't submit them via email. So it will say in that solicitation document under that section 2 of where and how and everything about submitting your questions. So just look in that document and make sure you get those questions in before the deadline. We talk about site visits. We have 2 different types of site visits. We have the mandatory site visit, and we have the urged and caution site visit. So the mandatory site visit is at a specific time, location. You cannot be late. You have to sign in, and when they say they're going to start at 10 o'clock, that's when they're going to start. Your name has to be on that sign-in sheet. You cannot be late, and that is the first thing we look for responsiveness when we get back all those bids is, did that vendor attend the mandatory site visit? Doesn't have to be the individual that submitted a bid, but the firm has to be on that sign-in sheet. Late vendors will not be able to, they can attend, but you can come walk around with us, but you're not going to be able to sign in on the sign-in sheet, and therefore we won't accept an offer from you. An urged and caution site visit is one where we're going to provide a site visit, but you don't have to attend to be able to bid. Often this is where we will meet and you can ask questions or whatnot, and you can see a property, but you don't have to be there because we feel like we've given you enough information in the specifications to be able to bid without actually laying your eyeballs on it. Or it's like in a parking lot and you can go drive by and see it anytime. You don't need one of us to be able to get into the building. So when we talk about submittal instructions, there are different ways that we receive bids. So make sure you have followed the instructions. I think most agencies now are using the sourcing tool for formal bids, but some may still be receiving by mail, but the majority of us are using the sourcing tool to receive those bids, at least all the state agencies. There's also direct submittal via email, and that's for those RFQs and the IQR, that little PDF document. We can receive those via email, but if you are submitting a formal bid, you cannot send it via email. You have to upload it into the sourcing tool or into whatever they are asking within the bid document. So when you're also looking through these documents, make sure that you're looking out for those requirements. These are yes, no things that are not evaluated. They're just yes, no. Is it there or is it not there? And if it's not there, you potentially can be found non-responsive. So look out for things like vendor must deliver product within 15 calendar days. And then it will say, how many days can you deliver it in? If you're past the 15 calendar days, we might go with a vendor that is more money but can get it to us faster. So just be mindful of that. Look for those must words, those shall, must, mandatory. Another example was you must submit with your proposal a copy of your contractor's license. If that license isn't there, it doesn't matter how much money you were. If it's not there, that's a requirement. Therefore, you're automatically rejected. Vendor must submit with its proposal 3 references where it's performed similar work. So for us, the responsiveness piece of that is, are those references there? Then during the evaluation phase, the evaluation team can check your references to see if it is similar work, and that would be part of the evaluation. The vendor must provide service manual. I know that if I saw that in a bid, it would trigger me to ask the question during the question and answer period. Do you need that with my proposal, or do you need it with the product when I ship the product and I'm actually awarded? So because it's vague like that, I would ask that question and make sure that I'm not non-responsive for not sending it with my bid. So just be aware as you're reading through these documents that there are requirements, and they could potentially be within that requirement section, but also within the scope of work. The differences between the requirements is those are usually yes, no. The criteria is things that we could ask for information from the vendor that we will use to evaluate on how the vendor plans to meet our project objectives. So we could ask for things like, these are our three biggies that we normally ask for. They can be very, very different, very other things that we ask for. Normally we ask for, what have you done in the past? So vendor experience, who will perform the work, and then how does the vendor plan to meet the business needs with their technical approach? So with that, this is the standard language that are in our templates when we're asking for vendor experience. In its proposal, vendors should demonstrate experience with public, private sector clients with similar or greater size and complexity to the state of North Carolina. So when we get into actually evaluating or we're documenting our strengths and weaknesses of what you have submitted, what we're looking for is, what is the past experience of this vendor and how does it relate to our project? So if you have something where you said, well, just for example, let's say we're doing a power washing bid and that we're asking you to come in and power wash and do the windows on the side of buildings and to do all of that, like rappel off the side of the building, and your experience has all been power washing driveways. That's not similar to having to rappel off the side of a building. So we would mark you as a weakness that you don't have any experience in actually doing the same type of work that we are asking you to do. So with all of the evaluation criteria, please submit, try to do, even with your staff or your personnel that's going to work on this project, you're trying to relate what their past experience is, how you're going to approach this project in the way that our scope is written and what we're asking you to do, because that's how we are evaluating. With your staffing plan, same thing. If you can give as much information as you want, be as detailed as you want, and try to relate it to that scope of work. Any questions there?
I do have a question in the chat that says, if you don't have past performance, can you use a subcontractor past performance? Will that suffice?
So I would make it very clear on how that subcontractor is working under this contract. So include how you plan to use that subcontractor for this particular contract, and then this is their past experience, so that they are the ones that are going to be doing this, and this is all their great experience, which relates exactly to what you're trying to do. So just make it very clear as to what their role and responsibilities will be in your technical approach, to include, and their staffing. Give the information and the qualifications on their staff and all of that. So it's not just you as a prime, but if you're relying on the past contractor to bring your proposal to the top, I would be very clear about what you're going to have them do under this contract and how that can be beneficial to you winning this project or whatnot. So just like I said, the more information, the better, and the clearer you can make it, the better. Is that it?
I was on mute. I do not see any other questions in the chat, so if we want to take a raised hand. All right, if no raised hands, we can go on.
We'll do it. All right, so we're going to get into the solicitation response methods of how we actually gather that information and how you submit your bids. So we're going to talk about direct submittal, e-procurement collaborative space, which is a section of e-procurement. We're going to talk about the e-procurement solicitation search and how to respond within the EVP. So how do you submit your proposal? Well, it will tell you within the solicitation document where to submit your proposal. That's all under that section too. So it could either be over email. Those are for those small purchases, right? So direct RFQ responses, those direct quotes for the small purchases, the IQR, PDF responses, they just have to be current, less than 30 days. We have the e-procurement collaborative space, which is a tool within e-procurement our office is currently not using, but I don't know if anybody remembers the old e-quote system. This will be replacing the e-quote system where we can reach out directly at the requisition stage, find the vendor in e-procurement, in EVP, select that vendor, and then request that quote directly through the system. And then we have EVP, where in the solicitation document, it'll say either you mail it or you use the sourcing tool. Agencies use EVP, vendor search, to find vendors, whether we're getting a direct quote, finding the RFQ responses, or you're being directly solicited through those commodity codes. We have the ability to search for those vendors through EVP. So that collaborative space is an informal quoting and pricing request function within the e-procurement system. Users can use the collaborative requisitions to obtain quotes for goods and services from multiple vendors at the same time. So we can click multiple vendors within our requisition. It requests those. It's going to the email in which those vendors are registered in EVP. It is used for purchases up to 50 grand because we're getting you to sign those terms and conditions with this process too. There is training on this collaborative space. Like I said, DOA is not currently using it, but I know a couple of the other agencies have started using it. So make sure that you're on the up and up so you know what to expect if you get one of those requests. There is training for the vendors on the e-procurement website. EVP, so this is where we post those formal solicitations. It is used for us to advertise for solicitations for goods and services. We seek open and fair competition for all of our formal bids. It also allows us, as you saw, to post tabulations of bidders' pricing once the bids have been opened and now once they're awarded. So often we will post tabulations of just who bid, and then we go back and update those tabulations at the time of award to show the bidders' prices and then who was awarded. It allows you as a vendor to market your goods and services because it's that one-stop shop within EVP. You can also search out there for those opportunities 24/7. So even the ones that you're not getting notices for, you can do an extensive search of all of the solicitations that are out there. You can search by department. You can search by keyword. You can search by those commodity codes to see what's out there to bid on. And it is also where you register. It is free, and it allows for free notification of those opportunities under the correct business code. And you can see when we've opened the bids, who's bid, and then once we've awarded, that's posted out there too. And like I said, with IPS, that award notification went away after, I think it was 30 or 60 days. This is now out there indefinitely. So you can do research to see what did, if it was posted on EVP to originally solicit, that award information is out there indefinitely and stays out there. So I showed you this live, but this is what EVP looks like. You can sign in here or here. You do not have to be signed in to review solicitations or browse our vendor portal. So you can click on both of those to be able to search. You do just have to be signed in to be able to bid. And know that this is where you do your hub certification, and that small business certification enterprise is all under that sign in and register. And that's where you can update your information as well. So when you're searching those solicitations, you can search by category, department, created date, whether it's open, pending, awarded, or canceled, and then hit apply. That's our extended. There's even more filters if you do the advanced filter search. So once you're in an actual solicitation, like this one's for the Department of Transportation for road and rail, you can hit respond to solicitation, but you have to be signed in. You will get this error if you're not signed in to be able to respond. If this agency is using the Ariba sourcing tool like we do, when you click respond to this solicitation and you're signed in, it will email you the link into the Ariba sourcing tool. So you will From EVP, if it's a municipality that's not using the sourcing tool, when you click respond to solicitation, it very well could take you to a website to just upload your solicitation. But for us that are using sourcing, when you hit respond to solicitation, it will email you the link to get into the tool where you can upload the content of your proposal. So speaking of sourcing, the vendors will need to be registered with EVP because that's your registration into EVP to see the solicitations. And then just note that when you get that link and you try to get to the content of the actual tool, you may have to register with the Ariba network as well to be able to actually upload your response. The vendor responds within the system, and the great thing about this system is we can break out sections. So it may say upload your response to the RFP right here, then upload your response to vendor experience, upload your response to your staffing plan. We can break it down into that level of detail to be able to make sure that you're responsive and that we've gotten back what we asked for. So if we ask for that license, we could put a separate spot where you upload that license and we make sure that we get that license. Now, it's not going to keep you from uploading the wrong document, but it will break it down so that we know that we have a response to that request. There again is all kinds of vendor job aids, training, and little videos on how to use sourcing on eProcurement's website. So there's training on eProcurement, and there's training on EVP, and there's training on the sourcing tab. All of that's out there on eProcurement website. Once you're in the sourcing, it'll tell you how many days you have. This is the live bid opening. Don't wait till that's 0 with 2 minutes left because it could potentially knock you out and not upload your document. So, but that's when the actual bid opening takes place. Know that you will have the content of where you upload each piece. There could be prerequisites. But there's a checklist to make sure that you upload where you should upload. It will not let you hit finish until you upload everything that was required. Now, any questions on how to respond to bids?
So no questions in the chat, but if someone wants to unmute and ask a question, feel free to. Looks like no questions, Meredith. I think we can push forward.
All right. All right, so now we're going to get into the evaluation methods. We're going to talk about bid openings and what happens during that, the evaluation methods that we use, reference checks, that executive order price matching opportunity, and get into the weeds of the clarifications and the BAFOs. So during a bid opening, these are for formal bids, so only IFBs and RFPs, the other documents we can open as we receive them. Those formal bids that have been posted out on EVP, it holds them in a lockbox. We can see that you have bid, but we can't see what you submitted until the time of the bid opening. So at the time of the bid opening, we now at DOA do all of our bid openings via Teams. We do it just as a conference call, and we are reading out who has bid. Pricing still stays confidential until we award. Sometimes some agencies will read out, if it's some kind of simple good, what that cost is, but on the norm, everybody's just reading out who has bid. It's at that time, that location listed in that solicitation schedule of bids must be submitted. Late bids and proposals will not be accepted. So if you're sending them in the tool, it will not let you upload after that time. If you are submitting by mail and it gets there late, it is your responsibility to make sure that your bid is in that office or at that location in which you had to submit by that deadline. Otherwise, they won't even open it. They'll mark it as late and not open it. Usually there's an attendance sheet. We on Teams ask you to put your information in the chat just so that we are able to document our file who attended the bid opening. There's usually two of us there. There's usually the agent that posted and then a helper, and she is documenting as they're reading out every bidder that bid to create that tabulation. During this time, and really during the entire bid time, the only person you can contact with questions is the purchasing agent listed on that particular solicitation. We are the holders of the information, and the reason for that is that we collect all the questions, we collect everything that comes via phone, via email, via the message board, all of that, so that we make sure that vendors get all of the same information and that nobody gets some insider information that nobody else knew about. So we are the holders of the information during the bid process, and that includes until award. So if you have any questions during the bid process, reach out to that agent that is on there. Know that anything you put in writing during the question and answer period is actually documented, becomes part of the contract. Anything they give you over the phone is non-binding or in person at a site visit. So if you want it to become part of the contract, to make sure that you securely know that that is what is expected of you, put it in writing during that question and answer period. Once we've done the bid opening, they usually tell you, okay, these are the next steps that this has to go through. It has to go through these approvals or whatnot. So if you have any questions as to where we are in that process, that's pretty much the only thing that that agent can tell you until award. They can say, okay, well, the evaluation team has evaluated it. They've given their recommendation to statewide. Statewide is now going through the approvals. So they can kind of tell you where they are in that process. If we have all the, if it's something that was over $1 million, we got to add legal to that process. If it was over a certain dollar amount, they add the officer for the entire state to that process. So some of those things take a bit to get approved, depending on what it's for and how much money it is, drives who is actually looking at it and who is going to approve that award. So all of that can take time. If you have any questions during that period of where is it, contact that purchasing agent and they can usually tell you where it is. Those tabulations of who bid is posted to EVP with the names of those bidders. And like I said, we will update that tabulation at the time of award. So the different methods that you'll see in that section 3, it will be in the solicitation on how we're going to review those bids. So we've talked a little bit about lowest cost. That's usually an IFB, lowest cost meeting requirements. So the bidder that meets all the requirements and offers the lowest cost. We do look at total cost of ownership. Had one where I was buying a generator, but currently we were renting a generator. So we asked for them to get us that generator within, I think, 30 days. We had a bidder that was lower, but they couldn't get it to us for like 90 days. So we were going to have to pay additional rental fees. We looked at that total cost of ownership, and the bidder that was higher for the generator actually cost us less because we wouldn't have those rental fees for so long. So when we talk about lowest bidder, there could be a calculation in there to figure out who is the lowest bidder for the state. So that's the first method. All these methods, however we're going to award, have been in the bid document to tell you how we're going to evaluate the bids that come in. The next type of evaluation we have could be a weighted evaluation. So this is best value based on a scale where the cost and the technical criteria are not of the same weight. So we could be looking at that. What have you done in the past? Who is doing the work? And how is your technical approach? And we will assign a point scale to that to make it a weighted evaluation. So therefore, as we're documenting those strengths and weaknesses, we're assigning a value to it based on that point scale. Whoever gets the most points wins. That is weighted. Then we have a narrative method. So we have a best value narrative method. This is where we document those strengths and weaknesses for each one of those criteria on how that vendor is the best value to the state, the most appropriate product or solution to meet the business objectives. Included always is cost, is one of those things that we look at. And we narratively justify why we think that this vendor is the best vendor and provides the state the best value. So those are three different types of methods that would be listed in the solicitation document under Section 3 to tell you how we are going to evaluate the award. Again, if you have any questions on what is in that section of how we're going to do that, what are you looking for? What would you constitute? Things like that subcontractor question. Those types of questions, ask it during the question and answer period. They have to provide you some kind of response, so that then would be posted in that addendum. So we could ask for references. Reference section will be added to the solicitation document. We have a standard attachment that is attached to all of our solicitation documents that asks for 3 references, what you've done for those references, and the contact information for those references. We could contact those references. We would ask the same questions to every references. Just be on the lookout with you must provide those, you may provide those, the state will contact, they may contact. But if it's a requirement to submit with your proposal, if it's not there, it could reject you. And what we're looking for if we do call them is that you have done things to the same size and scope as to what we're asking you to do and what the job performance was based on that reference. Clarifications and BAFOs happen during the evaluation stage. So clarifications are usually a yes/no confirmation. We've gotten something back in your proposal that doesn't make sense to us. So we usually send you a request for clarification that says your proposal on page 7 says XYZ, and that doesn't make sense to us, and we think it should be ZYX. Do you agree, yes or no? And so you would click yes, and then you sign it, and we get it back, and then that way we know that it's clarified. We are not asking you at that point with a request for clarification to negotiate. We are not asking you to change your proposal. We are not asking you to change your price. All of that is still solid with what you sent at start. So you can't make those changes with a request for clarification. The only thing with price that we could ask you is that if we asked for 5 widgets and you said that they were $2 a piece and your total price was $12, we could say, your math is bad. Do you really mean $10? Yes or no? So that's the only thing that we can ask about price. But everything else is we are not asking you to change your bid with a request for clarification. We're asking you to clarify. With a BAFO, we have gotten the approval to move into negotiations. So we might negotiate and we can change anything. We could change that we ask you for phase 1 and phase 2, and we want to clarify that we only have enough money to do phase 1. So we're going to do phase 1 in this contract. Does everybody agree? Yes. We could say, we got all back these bids and we want to negotiate price with this vendor that provided the lowest cost. Can you do any better? Give me your best and final offer. It could be that you took exception to our terms and conditions, and now we're going to argue about that for a couple weeks, and then we figure out that, yes, we can agree upon. These are the terms and conditions that we now agree upon, and we're going to both sign it. It will become part of the contract. So negotiations are all done on a BAFO document. The state has the right to negotiate with no vendors, one vendor, all vendors, or even outside vendors that didn't bid. That is written into the general statutes and administrative code. So if we got back all the bids and none of them met our needs, we could reject all offers and negotiate. So just know that if we get into negotiations, we don't have to negotiate with everybody. We can just get down to the one that we want to negotiate with. Executive Order 50 was put into place when Bev Perdue was the governor, and what it allows us to do is for goods only. It offers a price matching opportunity for North Carolina vendors. So if you are a North Carolina manufacturing firm, if you're headquartered in North Carolina and that product that you make is within North Carolina, and that's where your headquarters are, you can opt to participate in a price matching opportunity. And what that does is if we get an out-of-state vendor for the same specification that is higher and you're within 5% or $10,000 of their price and you chose to participate, we can come to you and say, will you match that out-of-state vendor so that we can keep those dollars within the state? That is an actual attachment that is attached to IFVs because it's only for goods, and it does have to be notarized. Actually, I'm not sure if that's still the case, but it would say that on that attachment if it does have to be notarized, but it does have to be signed and you do have to opt to participate into it. Any questions on evaluations?
So the questions in the chat have been answered. If someone wants to raise a hand and unmute to ask, you can feel free. No questions, it looks like, Meredith,
Well,
so we
we
can
got a
push
quiet
forward.
group today.
We do.
All right, going forward. We're to the award process. You've gone through all the jazz. You looked up those bids on EVP. You submitted your proposal. You attended the site visit. You submitted your question and answers. You went through the evaluation. Now you've been awarded a contract. Yay. So we're going to talk about what you get when you get awarded a contract, talk about the purchase orders that come out of e-procurement, and then how you invoice so that you can get paid for what you send. All right, so the award notification that you get, the agency purchasing office usually sends a certification of award memo to the awarded vendor. So once you get that award certification, we only notify the awarded vendor via email. Nobody else gets a notification because we will also post it out on EVP. So keep looking on that EVP if you submitted a bid. But if you are the awarded vendor, we will notify you directly. All the documentation so that you include your executed contract and anything else that includes your proposal. It includes all of that extra documentation is then attached to the requisition in e-procurement, and we issue the purchase order for those goods or services. So that happens at the time of award, and then the award is posted out in EVP. Usually we try to do that within 3 days of those final approvals, because that starts our 30-day window clock is when it is posted to the EVP as to when anybody can protest that award. So we'll talk about protest in a little bit, but the award is posted out on the EVP for 3 days after we get final approvals, and it's out there for the world to see. Once the contract is received, the vendor can now contact the contract administrator. So that guy that works on his boiler, that knew that his boiler was broke and wrote all those specifications and attended the site visit, now you can talk to him and actually get into the weeds of, now we have this contract, how is it going to work? Purchase orders and e-procurement. So you will usually see on that purchase order, be on the lookout. This is information that can be included, but it's definitely not limited to, would be the description of the items or service. If it is something that's over our fiscal year, which our fiscal year ends in July. So if you had a service that was going on for over a year and it's over that fiscal year, you might see multiple line items, and that's so that we can encumber funds. When you get a purchase order, that means that we have encumbered the funds for that goods or services. It's good to go. We can pay it once we get invoiced. So when those funds are encumbered, we're encumbering for this budget year, and then we can mark the rest of the year under next year's budgeted funds. So that allows us to work with accounting and all of that within e-procurement. Also included should be your bid or your contract number, so you know which purchase order is associated, accounting codes, pricing, delivery schedule, payment terms, effective dates of that contract, including any renewals, transportation and freight. Just know, again, you should have a line item for any shipping, should be separate. Terms and conditions. So if we had any external terms and conditions, there are standard just payment terms and conditions that come through e-procurement. There could be comments for vendor. The great thing about e-procurement is it allows us to send comments directly to the vendor. So it could be something as simple as, hey, we don't have a loading dock. So just know that when you're shipping us our stuff, we don't have a loading dock. Maybe you need to bring something that has a lift. So just be aware of that. It also could have that information for that contract administrator and their contact information, since you can now contact them. So on your invoice, biggest thing is make sure the e-procurement, when we submit that PO, it is pulling all the information from how you are registered in EVP. We now have a new accounting system called NCFS, and that system is having trouble if your remit to address does not match what your tax ID is set up as. So when you go out on EVP today, which I know you're all going to do, and check your administrator and check your codes, also check all your contacts so make sure we have good contacts to contact. And then also check all your addresses. Make sure that your remit to address matches whatever you have listed as your tax ID address. Otherwise, when you get a PO our accounting system is having trouble paying against if that address doesn't match. So just be aware of that. Include on your invoice your item description completed if you have dates of the services completed, purchase order number, contract number. Know that the state does not pay for anything upfront. We never have, we will not. Everything is paid in the arrears. You cannot invoice until services are completed. So if you have a monthly service, you cannot invoice for that month's worth of service until that month is over. So just know that then the state pays net 30. That's in our standard terms and conditions. So just know that you can't invoice until things are received. If there's inspections, if there's sign-offs on it, the agency signs off on your invoice, then submits it to their fiscal office to be paid net 30. Check writes happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays because it's 2024. We can now have the capability to send electronic fund transfers. If you sign up for that, that is outside of your e-procurement sign up. That's actually with the Office of State Comptroller. This is a website for that, but if you simply Google OSC or Office of State Comptroller, you can get to that website to submit all your information for EFT stuff. Any questions on getting you paid?
Not in the chat, but if someone wants to unmute. No questions?
All right, we'll push on. We're getting to the end. We got contract monitoring because it does not stop when you get an award. We are going to monitor this contract during the life of it. So we're going to talk about contract management, some tips and tricks on that, inspections and testing, renewals and amendments. We're going to talk about vendor protests, and then importantly, public records requests and how to submit those. So it's always a good idea. You've done all this work to get this contract, and you've probably been dealing with the purchasing office. And so now you probably need to get with that contract administrator and make sure that everybody's on the up and up, and that those delivery expectations and the roles and the responsibilities, and maybe your sales guy's the one that submitted the bid. So it'd be good to make sure that you have a kickoff meeting. If we don't reach out, you reach out and set that meeting up so that everybody's on the same page. It took a lot of work to get to this point, to set this contract up, and we want it to work for both parties. So define those roles and responsibilities. Maybe your invoicing department is different, and that's where maybe our invoicing department is different contact, and you need to figure out where to send your invoices to. All of those different in the weeds type situations potentially are not identified in that contract, so you need to identify those in that kickoff meeting. Clarify any goals or objectives and any terms and conditions, any delivery expectations. Do all that together so that you start off on the right foot and everybody knows what their expectations are of how that contract's supposed to work. Know that the state will notify the vendor if we have anything that was damaged and delivered to us, inaccurate order or late shipment. It allows us to do that within e-procurement. So like I said, we go in and receive goods within e-procurement, and then you can invoice against them. So your PO can be received on, and then you can invoice against it. If you have anything that you know is going to be on back order, or that you no longer carry, or something weird happened, just let us know. Like I said, this contract we can amend if we have to, but it's better if we start off by knowing that there's a problem, and then that way we can usually fix the problem with an amendment, or if we have to order something different, or if we have to make a change. Quality and acceptance delivery is all from the agency side. So the end user delivers and inspects those products that they receive. Just know that anything that you are actually installing, we will not pay until it's installed, up and running, and it's free of debris around the installation area, and the invoice is signed off by the agency, and then they submit it to their fiscal office. Vendor complaints. So it happens that we get down to the point where we can't get a vendor to do what they need to do. Just know that the contract administrator is there. He is the one that you should be working with up front, whether you have a complaint or we have a complaint, work together. They have the ability to put it in writing. If you have a complaint, put it in writing. We at the purchasing office, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So we are the document people. Make sure you're documenting, because we are definitely documenting. So inspections, we document on those, and any complaints by the contract administrator, try to work with them. If they get to the point where they feel like they can't get anywhere with the vendor to get them to do what's in their contract, then they can come to the purchasing office to write an actual formal vendor complaint. If you ever receive a formal vendor complaint, and that is normally, what you're held to is only what's in your contract as well, and we'll get into that in a second. But if you ever get a formal vendor complaint from a purchasing office, please take it seriously. There are deadlines in there, but it gives you the opportunity to cure. So there will be an action to fix our problem, and it also gives you the time that even if you don't agree with the complaint, there's a deadline to respond. So make sure you meet the deadline to respond, even if you respond with, I don't agree with this. Respond when you get a formal vendor complaint. Otherwise, we do have the ability to terminate. So just be on the lookout for deadlines in that. It's usually that you've been found in breach of contract based on the scope. So when you're working with the contract administrator, just know that if it is not in your contract, you do not do it. You are only held to what is in your contract, and you will be held to what is specifically in your contract. So know what's in your scope of work, know what's in those specifications, know what those delivery schedules are, so that you know what you will be held liable for. Renewals. So like I said, our contract standards are 3 years. That's 1 year with 2 options usually. So if we have those optional use, it is solely up to the state on whether we exercise those options. There are many reasons why we don't. One of them could be we don't have any money. One of them could be we no longer need the service. One of them could be that we're bringing this service in-house now. It could be that we have vendor performance issues. It could be a multitude of things of why we do not exercise a renewal. However, if we do, those are written into the contract up front, so they're there for us to exercise at our leisure. They don't require any additional approvals. We just exercise. We send you either an amendment or a memo that says we want to exercise our renewals. Do you want to exercise? And then that becomes part of the contract as well. Amendments are different. Amendments are to change something in an actual contract. So that means we have a contract and now maybe we need to extend. Maybe there are additional services we need to do. Maybe we need to change the scope. Maybe we need to change the rates. Maybe we need to change costs. It could be to change anything. Maybe we need to change the people. Change whatever it is, we do that on an amendment document. Those potentially have to go through those approvals through statewide PNC, statewide DIT for signatures, and then they're sent to the vendor to exercise that agreement. Only the state agency purchasing office can change the terms of the contract. If you have a landscape bid, and the landscaper says, hey, will you take care of these ants and just bill me? You say, no. Wait. I need to get that in writing. So provide us a quote, and then we have to amend the actual contract. If all of a sudden the agency, the fiscal office, gets a bill for it, and it's not attached to that PO or it's not attached to that contract, we're not going to pay it. So make sure, like I said, we're the document people, that if they're asking you to do something extra, that you provide a quote for it and that they get the proper approvals and it's documented and you get the chance to sign to it as well as we do when it's on a contract. So just be mindful of that with amendments. So vendor protests are used when a contract, usually a formal bid, has been awarded and posted and you participated you bid on that contract and you feel that your company finds some reason as to why you do not agree with the award. It is not a case where you want to see how you did. That is a public records request. If you actually have a complaint on how it was awarded in the instructions to vendors attachment, it tells you how to submit a protest. It does have to be submitted within 30 consecutive calendar days of the date of the contract award, and you have to submit it in writing to the state procurement officer at the Division of Purchase and Contract. Their legal department will review your protest. They can either reply directly to your letter, they could call you in for a meeting. They could be multiple results of a protest. They could say we need to rebid it. They could say that we'll go to the next lowest vendor. They could say anything, but they could ask to hear you out. They could just automatically reply to your protest. That is what a protest is used for. A public records request, everything we do in state procurement is public record. So once a contract is awarded, until it is awarded, it is not public record. But once it is awarded, the procurement file is open to inspection. So know if you want to see a current contract that we have, if you want to see how you did on a contract, if you want to see the evaluation documents, you can see all of that. Most agencies have a web-based request form. So our request form is on the DOA website. We try to give them as much information so that they can find it. And when you're submitting a request form, you want to submit it to the agency that posted it. So if it was a natural and cultural resources bid, that's who you would request to see the contract from. So try to give them as much information as you have, what the award number is, the contract number, the purchase order numbers, how it was posted, whether it was an IFB, RFP, all of that information, the title of it, anything that you can give to help us find it. We do a lot of bids every day with a lot of information. So in our public records office, just know it takes us a minute to go through that. We do review for and remove any confidential information that was documented by the vendor. On that note, make sure when you're submitting your proposals, if there is something that is trade secrets, your bid becomes part of the procurement file, even if you're not awarded, and could potentially be open to public records requests. It is up to you to mark anything confidential. That's what it says in our solicitation documents. So if you want something to stay confidential, you have to mark it within your proposal. Otherwise, it's open to inspection. Know that pricing is never confidential. So that cannot be marked confidential. And know that when a current bid is out there, you cannot see the current contract while a bid has been posted. So just know if you should be able to see some dates for those state term contracts and things like that. If it's currently on the street, you can ask how much are we paying and who has the contract, but you can't see the actual contract during the bid process. So all of that remains confidential because we've used that to then bid out for this one. That's on the public records request. Just you can get a lot of information off of Google. You can Google every department. You can usually find information of people, of contact information, public records request links, all of that. You're usually looking for the communications department of every, or communications division of every department is the ones that manage those public records requests. Here is your website resources that I talked about today. So that's in the back of this. I talked about statewide procurement, statewide DIT procurement, EVP, e-procurement, and then that's the hub office website is there as well. Any questions? And that is it for me for today.